Hey Dolphin, how are you? Good evening, Bianca. We're just finalising our stream and then we'll get started. One second, folks. Alrighty, it looks like we've started to get some traction. People are starting to come on. We've got to give it a couple of minutes, otherwise people don't really know that we're online. And I'm starting very late today. I apologise for that. Normally I would have started by now. We'd be halfway through. Apologies. I've just got myself a brand new Apple computer and I'm just trying to... It was all very easy for me on Windows. It's like watching cavemen finding something for the first time, you know, like playing with fire for the first time. So everything's brand new here and I don't know if you can hear me, so I'm hoping you can. So anyway, by the way, the background there that you can see, it's one of the nicest sunsets in the world. If you ever get the chance, please do it. Santorini. It's a beautiful Greek island. I'm going to share a little background. Every time I'm on it, there'll be a brand new little background there for you to sink your teeth into from the Greek islands, so you can see what a beautiful country my second country is. This is the time where I start dreaming about going back there. All right, folks, my name is Chris Nitzo. I'm lead forecaster at Weather IQ. Please let me know if you can't hear me. Everything's a bit new for me today. I'm on a new system. So if you can't hear me, if you can't see something, please let me know in the comments as soon as you can see that. And then I can make some adjustments because, as I say, I'm learning today in this brand new sort of ecosystem. All right, we're going to go through, we're going to have a chat about where the cyclone is, where the cyclone's going. Then we're going to compartmentalise the region. So we're going to talk about Cape York Peninsula. Then we're going to talk about far north Queensland. Then we're going to go over to talk about Groot Island and this area here in the East Arnhem. And then we're going to talk about Katherine and the area around the Joseph Bonaparte. And then we'll finalise it with a little bit of a discussion on WA. And then I'll take your questions. If I haven't covered your area, you've still got questions, please, by all means, pass them on to me and I'll try and get to them before I finish. So just be aware, though, that we are covering most areas that are going to come under the threat of this thing, and we will be discussing in depth each of those areas and talking about when you'll see winds, how much wind you'll see, what sort of rain you're going to see, when you're going to see the rain. All right, so all those questions should be answered. So if you're asking those already, just hold off a bit and give me some time to explain all the different areas and what they can expect from it. If we don't cover your area, it usually means it's a fringe area and it probably won't get hit too hard. But if we don't cover it and you really want to know, please let me know. All right, without further ado, where is our system? If you can see here on the screen, I'm hoping we're off to a good start. We can see the cyclone overlay. The Bureau of Meteorology has plotted the system around about, let's put the ruler out, from Cairns, about 800 kilometres or so. It's moved about 300 to 400 kilometres closer to the coast today. So it's been steadily moving to the west, and it's just started to move a little bit more west-southwest. Now, you do see that there is a west-southwest motion expected for the rest of the night. Don't stress and panic. What we do know is that we've got a very strong ridge underneath the cyclone, which is going to take that west-southwest motion, halt it, and the cyclone's going to come back to the west, all right? So back over to the way it was tracking earlier, all right? So just be aware that, yes, it is going to move a little closer, a little further southwards for the next 12 hours or so, and then a new ridge will build underneath tomorrow, and the system will track in a more westerly direction again, okay? All right. So, with that being said, let's have a quick overview here on these charts. These are two of our experimental models, and these charts will give us an idea, just a brief overview, and then I'll deep dive into what we can expect out of the system, okay? If you're interested in the technical aspects, I'm not going to cover them here tonight, but if you've got questions about the technical side of things, please ask me after we've covered everything, okay? Just otherwise we'll get bogged down in the technical stuff. All right, here we go. We've got a system that comes onto the coast. You can see that, by the way, you can see here while I've been gibbering, this is the time up here, Wednesday, and that's in universal time. So that's 10 p.m. Wednesday, 10 p.m. All right, so 2 different models, just to give you an idea at how confident we are that the system is not going to hit Cairns, it's not going to hit anywhere sort of in that area, right? It's going to go, it might start moving that way tonight, but then quickly move back to the west, all right? So we can see the system then continues to track westwards, making the coastline to the north of Cape Melville to the south of Lockhart River, making the coastline around about Friday morning through to Friday lunchtime at this stage is the most likely expectation. From here, the cyclone will go in a westerly direction, and by Friday night or very, very early hours of Saturday, the system will be out into the Western Cape. Now, you'll notice that some of our heaviest rainfall, if you're outside of ground zero, so if you're on the North Tropical Coast, you're not getting a lot of rain until after the cyclone has gone to your north and then beyond. So you can see that we're only starting to get good rain on the North Tropical Coast about Thursday at this stage, through the day on Thursday. So the expectation is, though, that the heaviest falls for that part of the world won't be until Friday. So you can see their heavy rainfall development through the North Tropical Coast on Friday, and then continuing into Saturday in this feeder band. And you can see both models have that area of heavy rain. Now on Saturday, we're watching the main system. The main system is likely to continue to re-intensify as it pushes westwards, and you can see once again the hallmark of this cyclone through the whole time is the rainfall on the northern side of the circulation. That's something we've been harping on about now for quite some time. You can see that a lot of the heaviest falls are on the northern side of the circulation. So the system's expected to pass over the top of Groot Island, give or take 50 k's either side, and then you can see the system continues into the base of the top end. We're already at Sunday night here by the time it's pushed past Katherine, so it goes through Katherine on Sunday and then pushes out into the southern Joseph Bonaparte Gulf on Sunday night and Monday. It then comes off the WA coastline, and this is where the entire thing goes a little bit pear-shaped, because here we don't know if it's going to go off the coast and then quickly shove off to the west, or a stronger system that may hug the coast a little closer. So a weaker system will push off to the west. A stronger system looks set to hug the coastline a bit more. All right, so in this setup, we would be anticipating that a system could come back towards the West Pilbara and or Gascoyne coastline longer term. In this setup, where we've got a bit of a weaker circulation, we see that system passing harmlessly out to sea. So that's the overview of what we expect of the system. So you can see, in terms of population centres, folks, who are we most concerned about? Cowan, Arakoon, they're the population centres we would be most concerned about. Outside concern for Cooktown and Lockhart River, just because they're probably going to be on the outskirts of the sort of intense winds. And Weipa to some small extent, down through the Pomparour, that area, very, very small concern for those areas, because they're likely to be south and north of the system. So Weipa north, Pomparour south. Further westwards, our main concern is Groot Island. Our secondary concern is Aliangula as the main settlement of Groot Island. And our secondary concern would be Numbulwar, which is just west of there. Our primary threat in the NT from a rainfall perspective will once again be Katherine, period of 12 hours of significant rain. And then into the northwest Kimberley, we don't see anything too concerning there except for a bit of heavy rain. And then obviously longer term, our primary areas of concern would be Port Hedland, Karratha, Onslow, Exmouth, and Carnarvon. All right, but they are longer term and they may or may not eventuate. All right, the ones that we're concerned about that will eventuate are those ones up here that we talked about. The ones down here, we're not too sure at this early stage, so we don't want to preempt it, but they would be the areas we'd be interested and concerned about in the later stages. All right, so with that being said, now we know what the overview is. I want us to focus on the individual areas. So we're going to start with the Cape. We're then going to move into far north Queensland. Then we're going to go into the eastern NT. All right, they're our primary areas of concern. And so that's where we'll start when we talk about the more in-depth stuff. So let's do that. On our weather centre, we're going to go to Cohen as our overlay. We're going to use a mix of high resolution modelling and also, this is one of those things, and also a opportunity here to use maybe some, just give me a second. All right, so we're going to use our high resolution modelling plus some of our lower resolution modelling that's quite accurate normally. So firstly, we'll use our AI model because that'll give us an overview of what we can expect here for this region. And our AI model we'll use is the ECMWF AI. All right, so what we can see through this area is not a hell of a lot of rain to start with until early tomorrow morning in this area. You can see that we do get a period of heavy rain overnight early in the morning out here around Cape Melville, Lizard Island on that western side of the circulation. You can see there's a bit of green down here through the rest of the Cape down towards Cooktown. As we go into 10 a.m. tomorrow, we can see that that rain lifts off and in towards the cyclone. So it lifts off and in towards the cyclone. So we lose that heavy rain at some stage in the morning tomorrow. And then as we go into 4 p.m, we gain it back. But we gain it back starting from the Cooktown area. So this is who gets the heavy rain to start with here. Even though they're not ground zero, they're the ones that see the heavy rain to start with between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. In the rest of the Cape, we're just seeing a few showers and thunderstorms. As we get to 10 p.m. tomorrow night, that's when we start to see some heavier rainfall development. Remember, north side of the circulation, folks, that's where the heaviest rain is. And you can see here, our heaviest rain is already starting to occur in the Lockhart River area down towards Cohen. Cohen will probably be just south of ground zero. Lockhart will be just north of ground zero. All right, so the expectation at this point is heavy rainfall coming onto the coast, all through Cooktown, all through the Princess Charlotte Bay, Cape Melville area, and up through Lockhart River. As we go through into 4 a.m. on 4 a.m. on Friday, so our time frame is down here, by the way. As we go between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m, we can see that there is a substantial amount of heavy rain now coming onto the coast, and we're even starting to get heavy rain around Weipa at this point. We're also seeing heavy rainfall continuing through Cooktown, Princess Charlotte Bay, the Lizard Island out here. So we're seeing significant rainfall through all those areas at the time. Our cyclone comes on the coast sometime on that Friday morning. There's still a bit of timing issues in terms of exactly when it comes onto the coast. Still got a little bit of time to figure all that out. You can see there, as the cyclone's getting to the coast, notice that instead of just being on the north side where all that heavy rain is, we're actually seeing quite a bit of rain around the circulation. That's a good sign that it's starting to really tighten up here on approach to the coastline. So there might be a little period here of intensification on approach to the coast if it misses Cape Melville and finds a bit of open water in here. All right, so from here, our heaviest rainfall is currently over Cape York Peninsula around ground zero. And then the expectation, by the way, we're still getting some heavy falls down through Cooktown. You can see that happening. And we're getting heavy rain and squally winds around Weipa and Arakoon at this point. As we continue westwards, we can see that into 4 p.m, we've got a significant amount of heavy rain that continues tracking west with the cyclone, particularly on the northern side, but anywhere around the circulation could be. By the way, these are 100 to 150 mils of rain over 6 hours, so it's pretty intense sort of rainfall in that 6 hour period. But the good part about that is we're only in that really intense part for less than about 6 hours, all right? And a lot of the times with these things, they can slow down and they can create all sorts of mischief for 1 or 2 days. This one, 6 hours of intensity. All right, real intensity, but only 6 hours of it. Right, we can see there's still some heavy rainfall coming in the form of showers down around Cooktown at this point, and as the cyclone pushes offshore, we can see that our rainfall eases off fairly quickly through the region. We move to a few showers and storms, a little bit of an enhancement here around Princess Charlotte Bay of further significant rainfall, and some showers continuing for the North Tropical Coast, and we'll talk about them in a second. So overall, you're only in the intense period for about 6, maybe 12 if you're really unlucky hours, And you can see that in that 6 to 12 hours, we're picking up the majority of this 200 to 300 mils of rain. So it's a really intense period of weather, and you'll notice that it's a pretty localised area of rainfall. All right, particularly on and just north of the circulation. So you'll notice there for places like Kawanyama on the south side, on the dry side of the cyclone, not much going on. Pomperour on the dry side of the cyclone, not much going on, okay? So really important to understand how localised the intense rainfall aspect of this is. There's no big monsoon around, so we're not all getting a bunch of rain. It's the areas that are coming close to ground zero and just north of ground zero that are the ones that will cop the rain. All right, so that's what we can expect from a rainfall perspective. Now we're going to go in a little bit more detail here for winds, because the winds are probably the big highlight, right? As we can see, this sort of rainfall, sure, it happens very quick and sure, it's very intense, but this part of the world is used to the rain. What they're not used to is the wind. So let's have a look at the wind for this region. And to do this, we're going to use the HAFS model. The HAFS model is a hurricane model specifically designed for these things and specifically designed to give us a look at the in-depth wind fields. All right, we've got to go a little bit further into time because HAFS model is a regional model where it centres itself on the cyclone itself. All right, so what we can see here are some gale force potential winds just nudging the Cooktown coast. So for those of you that are in the cyclone warning down here around Cooktown and you're wondering, shit Nitzo, is there a chance that this comes all the way down to us? No, there's not, but you may come under the influence of marginal gales, and that's why you're in a cyclone warning that far to the south. All right, so that's where we are with Cooktown. You can see there, so the possibility of that little orange area, that's marginal gales right in there. All right, so once we get into the red parts, this is where we start to get into our Category 2 winds. And you can see places like Lizard Island might come very close to Category 2 winds there. Now, this is our Category 4 and Category potentially 5 winds in here, where we've got sustained winds at 100 knots or so. Now, you can see that this area of really intense winds is very, very small. It's not a large zone. Just like our rainfall zone wasn't a large zone, this is even smaller than that. And you can see there that as the cyclone passes close to Cape Melville but to the north, the possibility that we see a little bit of eye wobbling. So a lot of the time when the eye passes very close to a landmass like this, there's a little bit of a disturbance in the internal structure of the cyclone, and so it creates a little bit of a wobble. When they wobble a touch southwards when they do this, okay? In the southern hemisphere, they'll wobble a touch southwards, but it's only a touch. It's not, we don't go from here down to Cooktown, all right? We go from here to maybe here, all right? It's about a 10, maybe 20 kilometre wobble, right? That's only if it gets within, you know, a few Ks of Cape Melville. If it's a little further north, we won't even see that wobble. It'll just come straight onto the coast. All right, from here, the cyclone hits the coast. And so very importantly, what is Cohen? Cohen is close to ground zero. Cohen's probably just south of ground zero. Ground zero is probably, in my opinion, a touch further north. But let's have a look at how things go for Cohen, because Cohen, you've got to remember, is inland. It's not on the coast. It's our main population centre, and it's inland of the coast. So we're not going to see Cat 5 at Cohen. No way in the world. What you might see is Cat 2 that might affect Cohen. Now you can see that the intensity here, the sustained wind intensity, is showing us 25 to 35 knots, so barely Cat 1 in Cohen. I think that might be a little bit too sharp, that rate of decay. And when we actually take a look at our wind gusts at the surface, we can actually see that Cohen is picking up at least sort of that Category 1 plus 2 minus area. So around that 120, 130 k an hour. All right, so that's Cohen's maximum winds there on Friday as the cyclone just hits the coast and just moves a touch inland. That'll be when Cohen gets its biggest winds. Now, as the cyclone pushes past Cohen to the north, probably a touch north, remember, of where this model's got it, we're going to see the possibility of up to about 90 or 100 kilometre an hour winds. So for Cohen, I'd be surprised if they ended up getting anything more than about 120, 130 k an hour winds. So bottom end of a Cat 2 is probably what we can expect for Cohen at this stage. Now, you'll notice that while the cyclone's been pushing westwards across the Cape, we're also getting winds at 25 to 35 knots around Weipa. So Weipa's winds are almost as strong as Cohen's were, because Weipa's winds are coming directly off the ocean as the cyclone pushes to the west. And you can see this is our primary threat area on the west coast, is Aurukun, and to some extent Weipa, because Weipa's going to find itself on the convergence feeder band on the northern side of the circulation. So there's potential there for really enhanced winds just outside of the actual core of the system. The core of the system passing closer to Aurukun, but Weipa's on that northern rain band, and that northern rain band is very, very squally. You'll notice that winds for ground zero, which is this very almost non-populated section of coastline, have decreased fairly quickly once the cyclone moves inland. You can see there's a period of about 3 more hours once the cyclone moves inland of cyclone winds, and then that's all done and dusted for the east coast. You can see there the system passes over the top of Aurukun. So once again, the westerly flow is onshore here. That's the concerning flow, because that can be quite strong. And you can see Weipa's getting marginal Category 1 winds, Aurukun 2, potentially marginal Category 1 winds. Pomporour and Kowanyama are on the southern side of this. Southern side means that a lot of our winds are southeasterly. That means they've got to come overland to come up into the cyclone, to rotate into the cyclone. So this means that our winds here won't be anywhere near as strong as the ones coming onto the coast from the ocean. All right, so just be aware there could still be gusty winds around Pomporour and potentially Kowanyama, but Pomporour more so. But we're probably not seeing the opportunity for really strong, more than, say, marginal Category 1 winds for that part of the coastline. All right, so our biggest threat on the coastline in the west coast is Aurukun. On the east coast is Cohen. You'll notice there for Lockhart River, we max out at a marginal Category 1 wind field. So you can see, once again, very similar to Cooktown for Lockhart River, marginal Category 1 wind field for both of those areas. Cooktown gets it on the way in, and Lockhart River gets it as the system's hitting the coast. There's a chance there. And once again, the big thing to remember is Lockhart's on the northern side, so they're getting a northwesterly. That means that northwesterly isn't getting a fetch until it gets offshore. All right, so that's for Lockhart. So once again, what can we expect? Category 2 at Cohen, Category 1 at Aurukun, marginal 1 for Weipa, marginal 1 for Pomporour, marginal 1 for Lockhart, marginal 1 for Cooktown, and marginal 1 anywhere through the interior here, where we're getting the southerlies, potentially marginal 2s up around Archer River and areas just north of where the cyclone crosses. All right, so that's what we can expect with regards to our strongest winds in this region. Let's have a quick look at wind accumulation. Bear with me while I get this up for you. Okay, so these are our maximum wind gusts, and what we can see here is, once again, fairly similar to what we just spoke about. Cohen maxing out at about 60 to 70 knots, Lockhart River maxing out at about 50 to 60 knots. So that's a marginal. This is one of those things with the brand new Mac. When you zoom in, you're zooming out, and when you're zooming out, you're zooming in. Bloody hell. Right, so Lockhart River, you can see there, 54 knots for them. Basically somewhere between 50 and 60 knots, which is around that marginal Category 1 range for wind speeds, or wind gusts anyway. Remember, we don't take the wind gusts as our category labelling. It's all about sustained wind speeds, but it gives you an idea. In terms of how strong the winds could get on landfall, you can see generally we're expecting to see 100 to 110, maybe even up to 120 knots right on landfall. And you can see that. So that's around about that 200 to 220, 230 kilometre an hour gusts expected. Probably around that lower end Category 4 at this point in time. But computer models not the best at picking up the intensity on landfall of these things. So it'll be more of a let's watch it on satellite and watch it evolve as it comes this way. The big unknown is going to be, how does it interact with this section of coastline? Does this section of coastline decrease the intensity on the way in, Or does the system push far enough northwards that the intensity won't be affected by this section of coastline? All right, so that's the big thing. Lizard Island, what can we expect there? Generally speaking, computer models indicating that we should be seeing somewhere between 55 and 65 knots for Lizard Island. So you can see there, a little bit of difference, but fairly similar. Cooktown, what can we experience? Maximum winds, generally around 40 to 50 knots. So just on the lower end of lowest edge of maybe Cat 1 if we can sustain those speeds around 30 to 35 knots. Weipa, expectations at this stage around 50 to 40 to 50 knots would be the general model consensus with regards to Weipa. Arakoon, I think, is a little bit over excessive here. I don't think you're going to get 77 knots. I think you're going to get something a little closer to 50 knots as well. 50, maybe 60 knots for Arakoon. But you would be the primary threat area on the west coast for sure, okay? So this area would be the primary area of threat in this side of the Cape. This Cohen area is the primary threat area in this side of the Cape. Pomperour, you can see getting up to around 40, maybe even 50 knots. So 40 to 50 knots is about our extent for Pomperour here. So once again, just slight differences depending on the exact track that the cyclone takes. But once again, nothing really changes. Arakoon, you can see Cat 1, maybe Cat 2. Weipa, Cat 1. Pomperour, possibly Cat 1. Lockhart, possibly Cat 1. Cohen, Cat 2. Lizard Island, Cat 1/2. Cooktown, maybe Cat 1. All right, so that's what we're expecting from a wind perspective. All right, folks, that's where we'll leave the Cape. Let's talk about northeast Queensland, further south. Now, we've got nothing to talk about from a wind perspective here. Absolutely nothing to worry about. The only thing I would say to you is if you're living up on the Tablelands are susceptible to some strong southeasterly winds. That's why we've got big wind farms out there, all right? So the idea is just be aware that in the high country of the Tablelands, we could see some locally very strong winds. Other areas that may see strong winds are any areas that dodge out a little bit. So the Daintree, that juts out a little bit, you can see there potentially getting 40 to 50 knot gusts, only sort of random gusts, not sustained wind speeds. Down here around Edmonton, Gordonvale, there's a chance there that we see a little bit of downslope accelerated wind coming down here. There's a chance there we get sort of 40 to 50 knots. Downslopes from the southeasterlies, not from the traditional westerlies that you're used to, okay? And then further southwards, absolutely no threat. So let's have a look at rainfall for that part of the coast, because I think that's the most interesting part for this section of coast is rainfall, not so much wind. Wind, we shouldn't see damage from wind here, all right? But from a rainfall perspective, yeah, there's going to be a fair bit. So let's move into the Cairns district. So the big thing to remember for this region is when you're getting a southeasterly, so while the cyclone is on the way in, we're not seeing too much by way of anything more than a couple of showers, all right? So it's a few showers, absolutely. But you're going to get those whether there's a cyclone around or not. That sort of rubbish there, you're going to get that in a strong southeasterly. What we're looking for here is the prolonged heavier stuff, all right? So this is what we're looking for, the prolonged heavier stuff. So what we've got here. When does everything change? Well, it changes when we start getting a bit more of an easterly flow. So up until Thursday afternoon, we're getting south-southeasterlies. By Thursday night, Friday morning, as the cyclone passes to our north, our flow opens up, and it opens up and it brings moisture in. You can see this northeasterly, east-northeasterly, east-southeasterly. This is the money. This is the money flow. This is the flow that brings you lots and lots of rain through this coastline. When this wind collides with this wind and collides with this drier air coming through Townsville, this is what's creating heavy rainfall for this section of coast. So when we take a look at the forecast radar for the region, you're going to see we start with a couple of these junk showers. I like to call them junk showers that we're getting this evening. And then as we go through the day tomorrow, more junk showers coming in waves, little waves of junk showers coming through. There's a few millimetres in those when you get them, some gusty winds, of course, and then they sort of bugger off, and then the next wave of junk showers comes in. Now, when do we get a little bit more than junk showers? When the flow starts to turn. So once the cyclone is to our north, our flow begins opening up. It opens up for Cooktown first. So Cooktown's first cab off the rank here, and we talked about that in the Cape part of the update. Beyond that, our next cab off the rank is the Daintree. And then beyond that, the flow starts to open up further south towards Cairns as we go into Thursday night, and then even onto the Tablelands overnight, Thursday night and Friday morning. The rain shadow effect over the Tablelands here isn't quite as pronounced when we've got an open easterly flow as opposed to a southeasterly. So here we've got significant rainfall expectations through the Cairns district, the Daintree district and the Cassowary coast region for an extended period of time throughout Friday. So we're seeing widespread light rain with some heavy falls embedded inside the light rain. The heavy falls move, the light rain basically sits over us for quite the whole day. And you can see there that our heavy rainfall extending to about Ingham Rolling Stone at this stage, with some local shower activity further south in the Townsville district. But our real focus here, once the flow opens up, is this North Tropical Coast region. You can see that we're well into Saturday here and we're still getting pummeled with lots and lots of heavy showers. The heavy rain might have settled down a little bit, but the heavy showers continue. When we take a look at the high resolution model, and sort of try and gauge some numbers out of this, you can see the high resolution model for tonight, junk showers. So this is junk shower activity, just scattered showers, but fairly light. Tomorrow, we start to get some heavier stuff coming through. And you can see the heavier stuff primarily located in the north tomorrow until tomorrow night. And when we take a look at the actual forecast radar for this area, we can see that the cyclone's producing its cyclone strength rainfall and wind up there. And then we've got this significant area of rain that starts to shift southwards tomorrow night, around about 8, 9, 10 p.m. and then it establishes right across the district as we push into early Friday. And then on Friday, we expect basically a whole day of fairly significant rain through this region. Obviously, the model cuts us off because it's a high-res model, so it's only run out to about 36 hours. But you can certainly see just in the last few hours of that 36-hour forecast where we start to really accelerate the rainfall, and not just around the here, but also down through the North Tropical Coast, the rest of the North Tropical Coast. So those last few hours of the forecast, we're really starting to jump those numbers. And remember, our main day of rain is Friday, with further flow-on effects on Saturday. So no major rainfall here until we open up that moisture channel, all right? And we don't open up that moisture channel until overnight, Thursday night, Friday morning. That's when we open up the moisture channel. So tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of junk showers coming onto the coast. Cooktown will start to see some heavier rainfall back half of the day for sure. But for the rest of you, lots of junk showers just coming in waves. Lots of breaks in between the waves. All right. Let's head over to the other ground zero. And that's over the eastern parts of the top end. Just a reminder, if I haven't covered your area, A, it probably means there's not much going on. B, please let me know if you need your area covered, and we'll come back to it at the end of this, all right? So I've got preset areas I want to talk about, and then the rest is up to you. By the way, while I've got you, folks, we survive on the generous subscriptions of our members. So if you'd like to support us, please head over to weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. That's something that's new on this one. I haven't put the little blurb up there telling you how to get to us. And yeah, please, if consider subscribing to us. We're not a very expensive service. It's $32.95 a year. It doesn't break the bank, but it helps us a lot. So if you do find these very informative, the other thing you can do, please, to help us out, give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube. That's free. So give us a like or a dislike if you hated it. Give us a dislike. I don't care. The fact is, any publicity is good publicity in this rubbish social media world. So give us a like, give us a dislike, whatever. Just don't sit there and do nothing. Or at least give us a comment. Ask us a question. Just don't sit there and do nothing. That's the worst thing you can do. And then I will if you want all the weather graphics that we've got, all the radar, high-res images, the models, $69.95 a year. Doesn't break the bank, but it helps us a lot. And a big shout out to our Fair Income sponsor, our major sponsor there. All right, Fair Income Build on the top left of your screen. They're our major sponsor, and without them, we probably wouldn't have survived this long. Right, let's go back to talking about the eastern NT. All right, now this area here, it comes under threat of the cyclone, but there's no build-up here. So there's no it's almost going to come as a bit of a shock. If you're not expecting it, I'll tell you what, in the old days, they would have been shocked big time about this because there's no real build-up for Groot. So there's nothing there that we need to talk about today. There's nothing there that we need to talk about tomorrow. There may be a little bit of a shower on Friday. Just, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing there. It just goes from nothing to crazy. And it does that in a very short space of time. All right, so it literally is the calm before the storm for Groot. All right, so just understand here, don't go in expecting massive winds, massive weather, all that sort of jazz ahead of this. The cyclone is pushing very quickly to the west, and as it does that, we're going to see things rapidly decline in terms of the intensity of the weather effects. So we're going to start with a couple of showers here, and keep an eye on this time down here, Saturday, between 10 p.m. Friday and 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. Saturday. We'll start with a couple of showers. Then we're going to move to quite a few showers. So same thing as what we just talked about in the North Tropical Coast. A couple of junk showers here. These are junk showers, just squally little showers, not giving us much rain, and that's it, right? And then in the morning, same, more junk showers. But as we go through, from about mid-morning onwards, it deteriorates rapidly. And remember, the cyclone is producing most of its rain due to technical aspects of the system on the northern side of the circulation. So this area here between Groot and Nhulunbuy, the primary focal point of our major rainfall. So the cyclone coming onto the coast, possibly around Groot, give or take 50k either side of the island. And that matters because if it goes 50k south, then Groot cops the worst of the rain here, all right? If it goes 50k north, the rain falls in the middle of nowhere over here, all right? Just not quite up Nhulunbuy's clacker and not quite through Groot, all right? So here, this is probably a better case scenario where no one's getting the smacking rain out of it, but we're still getting all the wind, unfortunately. All right, so from a rain perspective, I guess that's better because you're not getting the flooding in the major population centres, but from a wind, you're not being saved just because you're on the south side. All right, so here the system quickly pushes to the west to west-southwest. You can see there it crosses the coast around Groot into just north of Numbulwar down towards Bullman. You can see it pushing. Now look how fast the thing's moving. All right, so once again, this is the key understanding here of how quickly the bloody thing's going. So this is a 6-hour period. Have a look there. So that's in 6 hours, it's moved 105 kilometres. In 12 hours, it's moved 230 kilometres. So it's basically, when we average that out over 12 hours, you're moving at 20k an hour. It's only a small cyclone. From a cyclone perspective, this thing's tiny, all right? So don't expect there to be those cyclonic conditions ongoing for days and days and days. It's just like I said for the Cape, it's a 6 to 12 hour period of violence, and then that's it. All right, so there's not ongoing effects here. It's not a monsoon in behind it. There's nothing major in behind it, and there's nothing major ahead of it. So just be very mindful, though, that this is seriously intense stuff as it hits the coast. As it moves inland, we can see that 3 to 6 hour period 6 hour period of strong, heavy rainfall continues inland towards Bullman. Notice that there's no follow-up major rain for Groot. No follow-up major rain for Nhulunbuy. Nhulunbuy's on the edge of all this all the time, the whole time. All right, so nothing huge there for them, but enough there to just keep you interested, enough there to make sure that you're prepared and all that sort of jazz, all right? So there's enough squally showers and thunderstorms that'll be up here around Nhulunbuy that you've got to pay attention to this. You can't just assume, oh yeah, it's going to hit Groot and nothing's going to happen here, all right? So that's a surefire way of getting very surprised in a not very nice way. All right, so what we can see here is the forecast radar as the cyclone approaches. So once again, Saturday morning, couple of junk showers, all right? You can see our first couple of junk showers coming into Groot, coming into Nhulunbuy, couple of junk showers. Now, as we go through into lunchtime, those junk showers a lot more of them, a lot less spaced out, they're a lot more concentrated. And those junk showers then become the outer bands of our cyclone. All right, so our cyclone, remember, is re-intensifying on the way in. And you can see here that our cyclone fully, the cyclone core fully starts to impact the Groot area on Saturday afternoon, evening, and then continues to track west. Now, the timing is a little bit different here. You'll notice it's a little bit slower. Comes through overnight, Saturday night, Sunday morning. I think it might be a little bit faster than what's being reflected here, but it is important to understand. So Groot is copping it for 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, probably 12 hours, about 12 hours, which is about standard for all these areas. You're going to be copping it for about 12 hours. Once it goes inland, it might be more closer to 6 hours by the time it gets to sort of Bullman. But understand there, slight differences in the location there. All right, so this one has the system hitting just a touch further south, and that means the Groot would cop the worst of it. And the worst of it takes 12 hours to get through. All right. So in the other setup, Groot would probably not copping the worst of it, and the worst of it for you would take about 6 hours to get through. So that's the difference that the cyclone, just making that slight deviation to the south, would make. Way more impact, way longer for Groot. Okay, for Bullman, you can see inland, not expecting to see huge wind impacts, but certainly going to see some heavy rain on that northern side, if it is on the northern side. So if the cyclone does track this way, Bullman will be. Numbulwar, interesting little setup for them too. You can see here that for Numbulwar, we're starting to get some heavy rain there around about overnight or Saturday night, and then that heavy rain lasts for 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, even up to 15 hours for Numbulwar. And that's the direct crossing over the top of them. All right, so once again, there is potential there for slightly longer periods here around Numbulwar because of a little bit of funneling, which starts the rain earlier here, and the intensification of the system, which may create a slight slowdown of the system as it's intensifying and approaching the coast, as well as land interaction, which can also decelerate the cyclone slightly as it starts to interact with land. All right, so that's why Numbulwar just sees that little extra couple of hours potentially of wind impacts and rain impacts. But remember, you're very, very heavily, once you get to Numbulwar, you're extremely heavily dependent on the cyclone staying to your south or hitting you. If it goes to your north, we can halve that time of impact. All right, so you're only getting impacted for 6 or 9 hours, folks, even in Numbulwar, if the cyclone hits just to your north. All right, so it's so important that when we come back on Friday night and we have another chat, it's so important to isolate where is it going to hit. Is it going to hit just north of Groot? Is it going to hit over Groot? Is it going to hit just south of Groot? We need to get that right. We won't get that right this far out because the cyclone's got too long to travel, too far to travel. But we will hopefully get that right Friday night. All right, so come back Friday night. Let's have a chat about it, and we'll probably be able to nut out exactly what we can expect here. Because right now we're sort of guessing depending on exactly where the system hits the coast, and we don't like to guess too much this far out. All right, as we go to winds, we've talked a lot about rain. Let's talk about winds for this area, and then I want to have a quick look at Katherine. So in this setup, we are expecting the cyclone to be intensifying. We probably won't see the level of intensity that we're going to see off the east coast. All right, so we're probably not going to get to a 4, or I think the bomb's got it turning into a 5 at some stage. Probably not going to get there here. All right, so just once again, let's have a look at what we can expect. In Nhulunbuy, westerlies. In Groot, westerlies. Borrow, southerlies. Fairly light at this stage. This is on Saturday. Our winds then quickly, just like our rain, our winds will quickly intensify as the core approaches. So you can see still here, cyclone's only 6 to 12 hours away. We're still not getting tropical cyclone strength winds. All right? And it's very close to us. It's not far away, this cyclone, but we're still not getting cyclone winds. As we go, we can see it's this last period here. Bang, cyclone winds. We go from 20 to 30 knot winds, suddenly to 45 to 55 knot winds. All right, so you can see that increase, such a sharp and strong increase. This is what I'm talking about. It goes from nothing to violent and it does it very quickly, and it also goes the other way, from violent to nothing, very quickly as well. All right, so this period here, so we've started our winds here at 12. In this setup, remember, I think it's going to hit a little bit earlier than this, but the model here tells us 12:30 Sunday morning, and then 3:30, so we've had 3 hours of solid winds at Groot. 6 hours, this is our peak period now, 6 hours of really solid winds. This is now we're in the core. And then 9 hours, we're still in the core. So that 3 hour period between hour 6 and hour 9, we're spending 3 hours in the core. That's pure violence in there, right? That's solid category 2, possibly category 3 winds for that entire period. And then as we go through, we can see quickly settling down to almost below tropical cyclone strength by about hour number 12. All right, so 12 hours of winds, 12 hours of rain, folks. That's the key here. Don't think you're going to be in it for ages. Don't think you've got to prep for a multi-day event. There's nothing coming behind it. There's nothing coming ahead of it. You've just got to be prepped for that 12 hours of chaos. For Nhulunbuy, one thing I would say to Nhulunbuyans is that if you do see the system cross the coast, don't just think the thing's over for you. On the north side of the cyclone, there's a nice little feeder that develops. So just going back to here, just for Nhulunbuy folks, just understand once the cyclone hits the coast, this little feeder just in here, that one has a little bit of a punch to it. So just be aware that that could set up right over the top of you after the cyclone has gone past Groot and through Numbulwar. So this little sneaky over here might catch you by surprise if all you're looking at is the cyclone and you don't realise that there's potential there for a convergence max on that northern side. And you can see just how intense that northern side is. Those storms are every bit as strong as the storms that were around the cyclone. We just don't have the level of wind speed here, okay? So for Nhulunbuy, just be aware there's that period there after the cyclone gets to the coast that we just got to keep our wits about us and stay sharp, because there is a chance there that we get some pretty intense stuff on the backside for a few hours. All right, where that feeder band is. So that's what I'd say for Nhulunbuy. And now quickly, let's go over to Katherine. Oh, before we do, sorry, folks, sorry. I've got to do what I did for the North Queenslanders. Just making sure here, what could we experience from a wind perspective? And I'll tell you what, there is a chance here that you experience some of the strongest winds this cyclone has to offer in terms of human experiences. Because here, a lot of our cyclone winds, yeah, sure, they're going to be stronger for sure, okay, here, but they're not going to affect humans. Here, there's a real chance here that we affect humans, all right? So you can see that we're getting up to about that 100 knot range. So you can see for someone like Aliangula, those winds are in excess of anything that Cohen copped. They're in excess of anything that Arakoon copped, anything that Weipa copped, anything in Queensland. You're actually getting the strongest winds on this side. Even though the cyclone's not going to be strongest here, in terms of human population centres, you folks are in the firing line probably more than anyone else. And it's unfortunate that a lot of the focus is on Queensland right now, because sometimes this will get lost in translation. All right, so understand that this is a real threat of seeing category 3 winds here. There's no mitigating circumstances. There's no settlement that's 40, 50 kilometres inland like Cohen is. So here, there's a real threat that those category 3 winds are going to hit you. Versus here, sure, could it get to Cat 5? Yeah, but it's not going to hit anyone as a Cat 5, all right? The most we're going to experience is Cat 2 on the mainland, all right? No one lives here to experience anything else. So the idea here is that in terms of human impacts are going to be greatest on the NT coast, because this is going to hit fairly close to a population centre of Aliangula. And potentially, depending on which model you want to believe, it could end up heading fairly close to Numbulwar as well. And so Numbulwar, once again, no mitigating circumstances here. Numbulwar's right on the coast. It's not 40k inland of the coast. All right, so this is important for you to understand if you're in the Northern Territory, okay, folks? So please understand that part. that we're seriously looking at this potentially being the major impact area of the system. It just gets lost in all the noise coming from Queensland, the initial location. And then as we can see up here towards Nhulunbuy, just be aware on the backside, you can see there we're still getting 35 to 45 knots there around Nhulunbuy, and that's on the backside as that northwesterly feeder comes in, the possibility of some heavy rain. And from a rainfall perspective here, I don't think we actually looked at a rain total, so let's do that quickly. Right, so from a rain total, pretty similar to what we got in Queensland, falls in the 150 to 300 mils, probably a little bit less than what we got in Queensland, if anything, but overall, that same 12 hours of violent, heavy rainfall, and then not much after that, okay? So all this rain, really important to understand, happens in really quick time, so the flash flood risk is there, even though the ongoing risk of heavy rain isn't there. All right, so that's this area. And quickly over to Katherine. I've been saying we're going to go over to Katherine. We haven't gone there yet. All right. So for Katherine, the big threat here is going to be the not the winds. The winds aspect is not the big threat here. For this region, it's all about, and Daly River as well, it's all about the possibility of really, really heavy rain over a very short space of time. So once again, we look at where our cyclone's expected to go. And you can see here that by the time it's getting this far inland, by the time we're getting to Bullman, you can see maybe around 60 to 70 knot maximum winds. You can see by the time we're getting to Katherine, we're probably seeing about 40 to 50 knot maximum winds, so close to Category 1. For Darwin, you can see we're sort of just getting to around 25 to 35 knot maximum winds, so not quite Category 1 there, well below in fact. And you can see here the cyclone continues to track to the west, and you can see as we get to Niue, we're getting significant winds there around Niue, and then as we continue to push westwards towards Port Keats, I just want to zoom us out to see Port Keats for a sec. Right, so you can see as we get closer to Port Keats, once again, very importantly for you folks around Port Keats and the JBG coast, is does the system go out just north of the JBG or does the system go out just south of the JBG? And we've got a bit of disagreement there in the modelling about how close to the JBG we get. Now, we're seeing a lot more models that suggest we're going to get out in the JBG. So we're seeing a lot more models that pull us out to sea for a few hours and then push us back over land for a few hours. So this scenario that I'm showing you right now is the one that's currently most likely to happen, all right? So the scenario that pushes us over the ocean for a few hours before pushing us back over land. So you can see here the cyclone, as it gets to Port Keats, there's a pretty good chance that the cyclone's pretty well structured still. All right, so there's still a chance here that the cyclone could re-intensify in a short period of time. And you can see here that we're getting up to about 50 to 60 knot winds through the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf on the western side. So marginal Category 1 winds are anticipated. It's just a matter of will the cyclone be over water long enough for the bomb to reclassify it. Jury's out. So obviously there is a period there of very significant winds, but it's the period of heavy rain that's going to dominate proceedings here. And when we take a look at that period of heavy rain, it's just like everything else, only a 6 to 12 hour period. But you're going to see all that 200-300 mil of rain happening over the 6 to 12 hour period. And you can see once again the cyclone producing, just like it has over Queensland, just like it has over the eastern top end, all of its biggest rain on the northern side of the circulation. And you can see here that the cyclone pushes across in the morning of Sunday, or through the day on Sunday I should say. And really important for Katherine, does it push just south of Katherine, so Katherine gets this period of really intense rainfall, or does it push just north of Katherine, in which case Katherine misses that really intense period of rainfall and it heads just north of there, up around Pine Creek, Adelaide River. All right, so really, really important question. We can't answer at this early stage because it's still too far away. All right, the cyclone is still too far away, too much distance to cover, slight deviations in track can change that complexion very, very quickly. But you can see there, falls in excess of 100 millimetres are anticipated on the northern side of the circulation in a 3-hour period. That's intense rainfall, all right? And these river systems are still swollen. 100 mils in 3 hours, that's pretty serious stuff. And you can see right over the top of Niue. Niue's another one that hasn't been talked about much, but they have been underwater for quite some time, and they're potentially going to cop this as well. And you can see once again, falls in excess of 100 millimetres in 3 hours as the cyclone pushes in. Just remember though, as I've been saying for everyone else, there's no monsoon around. The cyclone is on its own, and once it passes through you, the conditions improve very quickly. All right, so yes, Niue cops 100 mils in 3 hours, but the next 3 hours they might cop 50, and then the next 3 hours they'll cop 5. All right, so just understand that there's a very sharp motion of this system, and that's the saving grace. It's going to affect all 3 states, but it's not going to affect them for very long. Not going to affect any individual area for very long. All right. Last, but and I'm not going to say least, it's just the one we're least confident in, is the WA setup. So in the WA setup, so we've got good confidence here, right? So the cyclone pushes across, gets off the Kimberley, so we're good till there. Then we go completely pear-shaped, because you can see here that we're driving the cyclone straight back into the coast as far east as 80 Mile Beach and as far west as, what, 1,500 Ks off the coast. That's a serious error here. All right, and one of the reasons why is we don't know, we sort of know what's driving the system westwards, right? But we don't know if that system's going to break down in about 7 days' time. And by 7 days' time, so let me just draw your attention to what we're talking about here. So on next Wednesday, there are signs that this system that was driving this cyclone westwards is going to break down. But there's also another sign that says there's a brand new system that's trying to form to the southwest of the cyclone to continue the track out west, right? So this is the part we're not sure of. Does the second system start to form and then keep the cyclone rolling out to the west? Or does the first system break down, reposition, and allow the cyclone to curve? Now you can see most of the models are telling us it's going to curve. Then our issue is going to be, once we figure that out, and we should figure that out in the next day or two, right? So don't expect us to take 5 days before we can figure this part out. Then the part that's going to take us a little longer to figure out is in this section here, where we do see in the majority of models a recurve, how sharp is that curve going to happen? Is it going to be a gradual curve, which puts the system down around Perth as a extratropical or subtropical cyclone? Or is it going to be a sharper curve, which would duck a dive a cyclone straight into Karratha, Exmouth, Onslow, or maybe even as far east as Headland? Or is it going to be a gradual curve where we see a cyclone maybe starting to transition as it pushes Carnarvon, Denham, and down towards Jarrow? You know, they're the sort of things that we'll be tossing up in about a day or two's time. But for now, we're still tossing up whether or not we even see this recurve, all right? Once we figure that out, and if it's a positive that, yes, we're going to see the recurve, then it's going to take us another day or two to figure out how sharp that recurve's going to be. All right, then we know that, are we looking for Headland? Are we looking for Karratha? Are we looking for Jarrow? Are we looking for Perth? Hell, are we looking for Bunbury? Right, so we don't know what we're looking for down the track yet, because we don't know, A, if this recurve is going to happen, and B, we don't know how sharp. We will know A in probably a couple of days. When we talk on Friday, hopefully we'll know about A, all right, whether the recurve is going to happen. But we'll still be tossing and turning between Port Hedland to Bunbury. All right, because we won't know how sharp that recurve is going to be by Friday. All right, but we'll have at least an idea that maybe WA does need to be bracing for impact by Friday. All right, remember, none of this is happening quick. So this is happening Wednesday. The system gets off the coast on probably Tuesday. all right, gets off the coast. So we've got plenty of time to figure it out. We don't need to start panicking now, Wednesday before the week before, all right? So it's not like Queensland where the cyclone's going to hit the coast in 2 days. Here, we're talking about something that's going to be over a week away. So if we see a sharp recurve, it will probably recurve on about Thursday towards the coastline. If it's a more gradual recurve, it'll be around the weekend. All right, and if it's a non-recurve, well, we don't care. All right, so the idea here is that plenty of time to figure it out. No reason to panic. No reason to start speculating too much beyond the fact that there could be an impact on WA in that longer-term time frame. All right, so there's no point talking about what affects what impacts here because there's 1,000 different solutions and each one of those comes with their own set of impacts and we'll just be here all night. So there's no point theorising that. When we can start to isolate those solutions down, I'm sure we'll get into it and we'll talk about what you can expect in different parts of WA at different times. But for now, that's way too far out. All right, I just need to draw to your attention to the fact that a large number of computer models, not all, a large number, are recurving the system, but way too early to know how sharply they're recurving the system. Okay, so if anyone's telling you Perth's under threat of a cyclone, they're gibbering. If anyone telling you Karatha's under the threat of a cyclone, they're gibbering. We just don't know at this early stage. Okay, and that's all I can tell you for now. Alrighty, that covers all my spiel. Geez, I've been going a while, haven't I? Right, I've been going a while. Now, I just want to have a quick drink. While I'm having a quick drink, folks, just a reminder, we survive through the generous subscriptions of our members. So $32.95 a year gets you my forecast every single day during the wet season, and $69.95 gets you all the weather graphics as well. So have a think about it if you are able to and you'd like to support us at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. We'd be very, very happy. Just give me 1 sec and then I'll get to questions, eh? Oh, that felt good. Got to be careful with my voice, folks. I can't afford my voice to go with so many video forecasts to do. All right. We got some super chats. So I'll deal with the super chats first on YouTube, and then I'll come back to our standard chats. Lucy, thank you very much, Lucy, for your super chat. Hi, Nitzo. I joined late. Any wind for Townsville? We'll have a quick look, Luce. I don't think so, mate. Townsville's one of those areas that really, really is uninteresting in this setup. I'll tell you what the most interesting thing for Townsville is, how many showers you might get. Let's have a quick look. All right, so we'll do winds first. And you can see here, the big thing is the boaties are going to hate life, all right? And the boaties have been hating life for quite some time out here. Southeasterlies, 25 to 35 knots off the coastline. And we'll probably see those get up closer to 30 to 35 knots at times, just off the coastline. Southeasterlies, you can see there, peaking in intensity Thursday night, and then continuing through Friday and Saturday. Now, in terms of mainland winds, probably nothing too dramatic. For Townsville, one of the things that we always talk about here in Townsville, whenever there's a cyclone around further to the north, I'm just trying to think, maybe we're even a little bit too far out to see it on the high-res model. Yeah, we might be just a touch too far out of the picture. One of the things that I'd say to you is that southeasterlies around the Townsville area, maybe the other high-res model might see it. We always get those little downslope accelerated winds around the Kungalla, Alligator Creek. Yeah, it does show it, actually. You can see here that just this little area here that just sees, and I'll just zoom into Townsville. Alva Beach is another one out there near Ayr that gets it too. And you can see Cape Cleveland. See this little area here around the high country of the of Maggie Island? Those sort of areas in there. Now, we can see that that's starting to happen from tomorrow, where some parts of Townsville really are getting a bit of a touch-up, around 30 to 35 knot wind gusts. So there are going to be little pockets of Townsville. The other ones are down around Nome and Alligator Creek. So those little pockets tend to do quite well in a southeasterly. So for wind for Townsville, that would be my primary thing for those areas. 30 to 35 knot gusts. They won't be sustained at that speed, but they will be gusty at times through that area. And our timing of those biggest winds are probably going to be Thursday through the day into Thursday night, and I wouldn't be totally shocked to see some of those winds continue into Friday morning. And obviously, if you're on the Paluma Range and if you're at the top of Mount Elliott, yeah, you're going to get very strong winds as well. But where humans live, I'd be targeting coastal suburbs, i.e. Palaranda, northern what's it called, North Ward, and then down around Alligator Creek, and obviously the where the Ames area is, and out towards Kungullah, and obviously Maggie Island, where you're susceptible to the southeasterly flow. So places like Picnic Bay would be susceptible to the southeasterly. All these little other bays in here. What's my little favourite little bay in here? Anyway, it's very open to the southeasterlies in that setup, mate. But that's where I'd be going for Townsville. Nothing destructive, nothing damaging, just windy. And Lucy says, thanks for all your hard work. Thank you very much for tuning in, Lucy, and thank you very much for your super chat. That's very much appreciated. All right, let's talk about the questions. All right. Hi, Mum. You are awesome. Easy to understand, says Logan. Thanks very much for tuning in, Logan. Great to have you here. Paul, look at Carnarvon and Exmouth, WA. Paul, too early, mate. I can't look at them for you with any sense of confidence. You'll need to come back to me, maybe even Friday night. I can't look at them for you. But if you come back to me on Sunday night, yeah, then we can have a look at them, all right? Because by that stage, we'll know how sharp the cyclone's going to curve, all right? Because right now, we don't know. We don't even know if Carnarvon needs to be ready for anything. The cyclone could be 1,500 k's off the coast. The cyclone could be hitting Port Hedland, could be hitting Karratha, in which case Carnarvon gets nothing, all right? So it's really important to know that there's too many scenarios there, Paul, and we could spend all night talking about Carnarvon, Exmouth, Onslow, just because there's so many things that could happen there. Heather, I think you'll be okay there, Daniel. I'm not sure where Daniel is. Dane, chances of it shifting further south? No. So this is Becklin. Becklin asking if it shifts further south. I'm assuming you're talking about the Queensland part of the equation. Let me tell you why we're not real confident, why we're real confident that it won't do that. I know this is the biggest fear of a lot of Cairns folk and Daintree folk, and it's a question that we want to try and always allay the fears of those folks who live in those population centres. But we don't want to do it if there's no real evidence to suggest it, right? But we've got real evidence to tell us that, no, that's not going to happen. So here's the real evidence that we've got. Okay, so in here, we have a mid-level ridge that's located around Emerald Mount Isa. So see this, and see how the airflow is pushing? The airflow is pushing the system to the west. Cyclones it is impossible for a tropical cyclone to move directly into this ridge, all right? Impossible. It can't do it. It will defy laws of physics to do it. It can't do it. All right, so the idea here is that while that mid-level ridge sits between Townsville and Mackay and out towards the Isa, that cyclone can't push south into that region, can't push southwest into that region. It can only follow the ridge pattern across. And so from here, the cyclone must move in a west direction. All right, and not only that, but when we take a look at the individual steering mechanisms at the 500 hectopascal level, we can see here that we've got a mid-level ridge that sets up to the southeast of the system, which adopts a west-southwest track. So this is why we're expecting the cyclone to move west-southwest for the rest of today, and then even the first part of tomorrow. But then on the south side of the cyclone, we're actually seeing a new ridge building up from the west into this area. So we're actually seeing a new ridge building in, or a strengthening ridge building in, and that'll keep the cyclone moving west. And that's why we're so confident it's not going to stuff around in the Cape either. We're very confident that the cyclone's going to push further and further to the west into the NT. And so it's for that reason why we're confident about everything until we get to WA. And once we get to WA, we're no longer confident. And also, by the way, while I've got you there and we're asking about that cyclone, there's another low pressure system that's forming in the northeast Coral Sea. And the reason why we're that confident that that system isn't going to hit the coast is because in the upper level atmosphere, there's a upper level low located over the Coral Sea, and an upper trough located over the Coral Sea. And that's going to make sure that we have a force field over Queensland, which won't allow anything else from the Coral Sea to move west for the next 7 to 10 days. Anything beyond that, jury's out, of course, because there are some signs that there's another low in about a couple of weeks' time. But for now, there's a bit of a force field over Queensland for the coming week that will not allow any further cyclone activity once this one gets in. Okay? Boat's going to be right in Cairns, do you reckon? As long as they're protected from a fresh to strong southeasterly. You see southeasterlies that are strong in Cairns all the time, mate. So, you know, as long as you're in a normally strong southeaster, yeah, we're pretty confident boats are going to be fine. Julie, sorry if already asked, but how is the Daintree going to fare? Yeah, Julie, we had a look at the Daintree. So the Daintree's going to see a lot of rain, some strong winds, but nothing dramatic outside of that. And we're not going to see an ongoing rain saga here. We are going to see a fair bit of rain that lasts a bit longer than in other areas, though. So you can see here, when we take a look at the Daintree, as we go, we've still got a fair bit of rain even into Sunday morning. Now, most of the rest of the state's fine and dry by then, but for you folks, it does go on for a bit longer than other areas. And so we do see that if anyone's going to cop really heavy rain in Queensland from this, it's going to be the Daintree, because there's a chance there that the system just sticks around for a little bit longer. And you'll see it's the Daintree and it's the Cassowary coast. These are the coastlines most susceptible to the converging flow. The cyclone won't be causing that directly. The cyclone's causing all the rain to the north of it, okay? But here, because we've got ongoing easterly flows while the cyclone's pushed out to the west, there's a chance there that we actually see quite a bit of rain over the Daintree. So we do expect to see very heavy sort of accumulation of rainfall through this area, even though it's not directly attributable to the cyclonic circulation. All right, so, and when we take a look at, say, some of our higher resolution modelling, yeah, you can see the Daintree picking up 300, 400. I wouldn't be surprised to see an isolated 500 in there. All right, because it's ongoing for the Daintree. It's not just a one-off bit of rain. Oops, sorry, I don't know what I've done there. Good on you, Nits. If the boss doesn't know what he's doing on his own website. Right. Yeah, so with the Daintree, you can see there that really significant rainfall, right, is expected in the region. Yeah, so that's the primary concern is rainfall for sure. And the primary concern is that the rainfall keeps going for a few days. So one of the few places in the nation that would see some effects of this that last longer than, say, 12 hours. So you can see tomorrow we're starting to get rain. Friday we're getting heavy rain. Saturday we're getting heavy rain. And even into Sunday we're getting heavy rain as well. So, and by Sunday we're just starting to push it northwards. Okay, so that period, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yeah, it's quite a substantial rain period for the Daintree, mate. Susan, excellent detailed information, clear and easy to understand. Thanks, Nitzo. No worries. Thanks, Susan. Thanks for joining us. That's what we strive to do, mate. Wow, much calmer info than we are getting elsewhere. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we try and keep it real here, and reality often isn't quite as dramatic as what the media and even some other weather sites try and make it out to be. But that's how they make money. Craig, I think it'll hit Tully to Cairns area category 4. We'll run southwest tomorrow night. I hope you're wrong, Craig, because if you're not, it's gonna make us all look like dills except for you. So I'm hoping you're wrong, and I'm pretty confident you're wrong. But you never say never in the Coral Sea. The Coral Sea has a way of humbling us. But for now, mate, nothing I'm seeing in any evidence whatsoever would back your claim up. Melzy, educational and informative as always. Thanks, Melzy. Andrew, hey Nitso, if it hits Friday, the 20th of March, 20 years to the day since Cyclone Larry. Yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff, isn't it? And it should hit Friday, so yeah, 20 years, a 20-year anniversary. And, you know, if we're talking about Larry, have a quick look here. If I'm not mistaken, Larry took a very similar... let's try that again with not a random Larry. I'm pretty sure Larry took a very similar sort of track, didn't he? Just a bit further south. Let me just have a look. Larry was a long time ago. It's stretching my... Yeah, there it is there. All right, so the only difference here in the track between Larry and old mate over here, Narelle, is that Larry pushed this southward bit to start with, right? Very similar ridge that built in underneath. And we're going to see the same thing here, right, where the system's moving west-southwest tonight into tomorrow morning, and then it's going to take a bit more of a westerly push tomorrow. So very similar track to Larry, but this southward thing is what Larry did at the start. Now, Narelle, she went northwest at the start, all right? And so the rest of the track's going to mirror Larry, but... and then mirror Larry to the coast and then continue much further with this one. But... yeah, very... but as far as I'm aware, Larry was also steered by a fairly significant mid-level ridge to the south. It's just that the mid-level ridge broke down very quickly once Larry hit the coast. So, yeah, mate, very interesting, isn't it? 20 years to the day and almost simple, not identical, but similar tracks in the systems. The only thing that saves Cairns and that population centre is the fact that Narelle went northwest, and then she's taking this Larry track, all right? So she's gone northwest, so her most southern potential impact is sort of Cape Melville, right? So, yeah, that's what saved you guys from a Larry version 2, is that northwest motion to start with. But, yeah, very interesting, eh? Jules, hey, Nitso, thanks as always. Oh, this is a big, long one. My dirty mind went somewhere else. Nitso, thanks as always for your information. It is appreciated. Can you please explain why this cyclone is different from Cyclone Steve, Larry and Yasi? Sorry if you have explained why. There were a few highs down south that feed the whole system. Trust your wealth and knowledge, but Cairns locals have seen previous patterns. This system is also supposed to have more of a tornado pattern. I'm not seeing anything to do with tornadoes in this system. Okay, this is a multi question. Wow, okay. All right, so let's deal with your first one. Hi, Nitso, thanks as always. What's the difference between Steve, Larry and Yasi? Yasi had a very strong mid-level ridge that drove it from Fiji all the way to North Queensland. This has got a strong mid-level ridge, but instead of starting in Fiji, it started out here and it's going to push all the way to Western Australia. So similar ridge, just different positioning of the ridge. Yasi was a much larger system. This is a very small system. By Coral Sea standards, this system is quite small. It's not a midget, what we call a midget, or a what's the politically correct term they use for them now? Anyway, it used to be midget, but now we're not allowed to call them midgets because the midgets got cranky about being called midget cyclones. Anyway, I'm still going to call it a midget till I figure out what they've renamed it to. Anyway, midgets are the really tiny ones, the ones that are sort of less than 100 k's across, right? This isn't that, but it's also not the typical Coral Sea. Typical Coral Sea cyclone has a gale radius of about 250 to 350 kilometres across. Gale radius, sorry, across, yeah. So this system's got about 150 to 170 kilometres across. So it's a very small system for the Coral Sea. I know it looks amazing on satellite, but it's very small. So it's very similar to Larry like that. And therefore, with Larry and this one, very susceptible to the environment around them. Yasi had the ability, because it was so large, to create the environment around it. So even if the environment wasn't that favourable, it could have changed the environment because it was so large that if there was dry air, it could bring moist air in. Larry and this one can't do that. They're too small. So they are totally reliant on the atmosphere around them. So if this one tries to move too far south, so let's say hypothetically Narelle tries to move down towards Cairns, goes, stuff you weathermen, you don't know shit. I'm going to move to Cairns because that's what I want to do. All right. What will happen is that the atmosphere near Cairns is extremely hostile to tropical cyclones. And so as the cyclone attempted to get down towards Cairns, it would get sheared away very quickly and it would lose a lot of intensity between that area between Cooktown and Cairns. All right. Because that area is quite unfavourable for the cyclone. So there's, with Larry and with this one, they're very susceptible to the environment around them. So that's a similarity. They're being steered by similar mechanisms. That's a similarity. Larry, Yasi, Steve, I'm less familiar with. So I can't comment on Steve without having a look at what Steve did. But with Larry and Yasi, very similar steering all the way to the west. Very different sizes, similar strengths. All right, so that's the there's a lot of similarities there, but there's also differences between those three. Yasi was a one of a kind, that sort of massive monster system we haven't seen since, and I don't remember seeing it before either. Right, that's the first part of your question. Highs down south feed the system. Not necessarily. Highs down, so just a reminder, cyclones aren't steered by what's going on at the surface. Cyclones are steered by what's going on about 5 kilometres, 7 kilometres, 9 kilometres, even 3 kilometres up in the atmosphere. All right, so that's where cyclones are steered, not by what's happening on a weather map down south. If there's a big high down south, doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a big cyclone coming into the coast. All right, there's been so many times that people have made that mistake. Remember, cyclones aren't steered by what you see on a weather map. Cyclones are steered by mid-level ridges and mid-level troughs. So that part there, I just had to correct you because it's a common misconception that highs, if there's a high down south, the cyclone comes west. And it's a very common misconception and it's not right. Okay. So you're basically concerned for Cairns because you're thinking that the system is going to come towards Cairns. We're not seeing, I have to be very clear on this, we're not seeing any credible evidence anywhere to suggest that. So if you're saying that that's what you feel, then that's a feeling. That's not backed by any sort of science that we can see. All right, so I know that Cairns folk might be on edge about this, but there's literally nothing there. I can't show you a single computer model that has this going anywhere near Cooktown, let alone Cairns. So, mate, all I can say to you is that there is no credible evidence whatsoever. I mean, we have to be wrong, and we have to be wrong so badly that we probably can't be trusted to be right ever again for this thing to hit Cairns. We're just not seeing any evidence of it whatsoever. There's just nothing there. And, you know, you can look all you want. There's just literally nothing there. That's as close as to Cairns as we get. This model here is as close to Cairns as we get. And that's a system that hits Cape Melville. You can see not even Cooktown's getting Category 1 winds in that setup. So there's no real threat to Cairns whatsoever. And I get that people are on edge, and I get that there's, you know, a lack of trust in some of the bomb stuff that they've done in the past. But they're pretty good at cyclones. All right, they're pretty good at cyclones, the bomb these days, and they're not going to make that big a mistake, and neither are we. All right, you know, the mistake could be that it gets as far south as Wudjul up here. All right, that could be the mistake. If that wouldn't be it'd be a big mistake, but it's not a monumental mistake, you know. But yeah, sure, there's a very 1 to 5% chance that it gets down to Wudjul or Hopevale up here, right? So the idea is, you know, we've got to be very wrong to get there to start with. You can imagine we've got to be another order of magnitude wrong to get it that wrong that we're hitting Cairns. All right, so as I say, man, just I'd be stressing less. Listen, I get it. The system's moving west-southwest right now, right? And if it continued that track, and if it didn't deviate off that track, and if we drew a straight line for that track, you'd actually see that the system would probably come fairly close to the coast near Cairns, all right? But that's not the way this will play out. So we're not going to go from here west-southwest the whole way to hit Cairns or Port Douglas. All right, we're going to go west-southwest tonight, but we've been expecting that. All right, we've been expecting that, and at some stage tomorrow, probably about 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe about lunchtime, the cyclone will stop moving in this southerly direction and will start moving in this more west to even west-northwest direction. And we're very confident about that, okay? Very confident. I'm not going to say 100% because nothing's guaranteed in life, nothing guaranteed in weather, but this will be pretty close to it, that it's not going to hit Cairns. Okay, so if there's anything I can say to you there to try and set your mind at ease, there is nothing to suggest that this is coming to Cairns. Not one single piece of evidence. Okay? Mossman going to have much wind. Simon, we talked about the Daintree a fair bit, mate. At this stage, 40 to 45 knot gusts would be about the max for Mossman, so just shy of Category 1 wind intensities. But for Mossman, it's all about the rain, right? So, Simon, rainfall is what you're interested in. And remember, rainfall kicks off. Junk showers tonight. Showers turning a bit heavier by tomorrow night, or very heavy by tomorrow night, and then continuing through Friday, through Saturday, and then clearing on Sunday. So that period, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and the first part of Sunday, the Daintree, Mossman, all those areas, Clint, answering your question here too, all those areas are susceptible to 300, 400, maybe up to 500 mils of rain in that time, okay? So yeah, that's important that we're aware. The cyclone's not going to hit you, but you're certainly going to get impacted by all of this rain that'll be starting to push in from the convergence on the southern side. Amanda, there's a lot of communities out there that will suffer. Yes, I'm sure there would be, Amanda, but I'll tell you what, it'd be a lot harder if we had hundreds of thousands of people suffering because one of these little blighters was going to hit us directly. So, yes, I do, I am aware and I'm sensitive to the fact that communities, and it's very hard to get aid to communities, but it's also important to understand that those communities, yes, they're going to suffer, but they're not going to get the brunt of the strongest of the cyclone because, as far as I'm aware, there's no communities where this thing's about to hit the coast. There's Cowan, there's Archer River. Is Archer River a community? I think it is a community. So there's Archer River, Cowan, and then on the west side, there's Arakoon, Pomparore, Kawanyama to some extent, but they're not going to cop a Cat 5. They're going to cop as we talked about for them, they're going to cop a Cat 1 and 2. And they're not going to cop it for days. They're going to cop it. It's not like the Daintree and northeast Queensland here where they're going to see 3 or 4 days of heavy rain. They're going to cop it for 12 hours and then it's going to be over and then they can get on with their lives. All right. So listen, it is an intense system. No doubt about that, but it's not going to hit those communities at full intensity. That's the important component. I can't answer any questions about airports, guys, but if you're flying to Cairns, I can't imagine why they'd be shutting anything in Cairns. I mean, sure, there's going to be some rain. Worst case scenario, they might delay your flight by an hour while the rain buggers off and we get a little bit of lighter rain. I can't imagine they're going to shut the airport for a bit of rain. I mean, it's Cairns. It rains every second day. So, yeah, I'd be very, very surprised if they're cancelling flights out of Cairns. I mean, they'll cancel flights from Cairns to maybe Cooktown or Cairns to Lockhart or Cairns to Cowan. Does Cowan have an airstrip? They might cancel sort of flights into those areas, and maybe Cairns to Weipa. They might cancel for a little bit, but not into Cairns, no. Hi Nitzo, once in the NT, DJ James. Hi Nitzo, once in the NT, the track forecast has moved north a fair bit since 2 days ago, now between Groot and Gove. Any chance it could be a little bit more north to Gove? No, we're not seeing a direct impact on Gove. I still think Gove's best chance is going to be after the cyclone has crossed the coast. Let me just have a quick look on the latest modelling's just coming out. Let's see if we've got any changes. Yeah, so that one's between Groot and Borrow. That one's right around the northern edge of Groot. There's not many changes there. I'm not seeing evidence that this is coming right over the top of... let's just have a look at our weather lab. Yeah, so probably the northern edge of the solutions has pushed it close enough to Nhulunbuy. But, you know, we were still talking about the northern edge error margin, DJ James. So, you know, we're talking about a 5 to 10% risk of something that far north, right? So it's not a high probability. Yeah, the trend is a little bit north, but not to the stage where we're seriously looking at this pushing into the northeast top end for a direct hit. Still, Groot seems to be ground zero here. Maybe just north of Groot seems to be ground zero for now. I'm not seeing evidence that the ridge is going to build strongly and far enough to the southwest to drive it in a northwesterly direction. So could it drift a touch further north? Yeah, sort of midway between Nhulunbuy and Groot. Yeah, I could see that happening, especially if the cyclone doesn't move southwest tonight and it moves more west tonight, then it hits closer to Lockhart. It then continues to hit basically west and come off the coast of Arakoon, and then maybe one of these northern solutions verifies, and that might put Nhulunbuy on the northern edge of the cyclone strength wind field, right? So remember, the cyclone's very small, and the wind field, so the cyclone strength wind field is very small as well. So it's for a Queensland cyclone, it's pretty small. It's very strong, but it's pretty small. Wayne says 6 to 12 hours of violence. Yes, Wayne, that's the only way I can explain it in terms that everyone can understand and everyone can treat with a bit of trepidation. If you just say windy and rainy, people won't take that serious. Violence is the right word because that's what it is. Violence, atmospheric violence. Is the west track set in stone? Yes, it's set in stone. On approach to the coast it is, and it's set in stone on approach to the east coast of the territory as well. Where it's not set in stone is once it gets off the WA coast. That part's not set in stone, so we don't know what it's going to do when it gets off the WA coast yet. We'll figure it out soon, but we don't know it yet. Nice background, Nitso. Yeah, this is my... how good's that? It's the sunset, one of the most famous sunsets in the world, Santorini. And we had in my last trip there last year, I had a beautiful apartment right overlooking the caldera, and my head's in the road. But it's one of the nicest sunsets you'll ever see in your life. I'm a big sunset romantic. That's my little soft side. And I just love Greek. There's just nothing like Greek sunsets. It's just, you get all the dust from Africa that gets pushed up through the Mediterranean, and you've got the sun. It's just such an interesting refraction and reflection of light as the sun drops on the horizon. It gets huge. The sun goes from this little tiny ball to this massive, massive round thing on the horizon. And the dust, it's just one of the most glorious things you can ever experience, you know. And there's 3 months. I get 3 every single afternoon in Greece is fine and sunny. Occasionally there's a storm, and you get 3 months of those sunset views. Incredible. Just, yeah, nicest sunsets in the world, I've got no doubt. Yeah. James, Nitso, do you lift, bro? Yeah, mate, I do try to lift. I was a real fat fella only a little while ago. I was 150 kilos and 45% body fat. I'm now 92 kilos and 16% body fat. So I still got about 4% I want to lose to look properly jacked. But yeah, I'm on a process. But yeah, 50 kilos down and about 30-something% body fat down. So yeah, I'm actually looking like I belong in a gym these days, as opposed to my first, my first couple of years. Yeah, so the last 3 years, mate, I've been trying to go well. Stuart, brilliant, honest, easy to understand commentary. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for joining us, mate. Karratha, Leah, Karratha, much impact. We don't know yet, Leah, because if you take a look at where Karratha is here, this is a great chart, actually. I'm glad I had it up. You can see there are some signs that the system may recurve into Karratha, but listen, we've got plenty of time to figure that out. So if it does come anywhere near Karratha, it's going to come in around Thursday or Friday next week. So that's a long, long time away when it comes to a cyclone. And you can see how far it's got. It's basically got to travel right across Australia between now and then. So there's a bunch of things that can change. So I don't want to sort of speculate about Karratha or anyone in WA just yet, because there's so many things that can change here. And if I give you some information tonight, I'll come back on Friday and it might be something completely different. So I don't know if there's going to be much impact for Karratha Leah. Is there a chance there is? Yeah, sure. It's about a 20% risk of the system being somewhere where it's actually impacting Karratha, but it's got 5,000 kilometres to travel. So we really don't know. Any slight deviations in the track can make massive changes by the time we get to Karratha, mate. So it's not one of those things where I can start isolating towns in WA and going, yeah, you need to brace yourself, 7 days out. It's pretty irresponsible if I was to do that, especially when you look at the sort of track forecasts that we've got here and how widely varied they are. What's the potential for anything after Narelle off the NT coast, a week or so after? I don't know, mate. I haven't looked. Oh, that's an area I genuinely haven't looked. What do we got here? Just give me a sec. Yeah, I can see there's a bit of rumbling there, isn't there? There's nothing major. What's our probabilities telling us? All right, so we know that there's going to be another low or cyclone in the eastern Coral Sea. That's going to track southwards. But for the NT, I think right at the end of the forecast there was something brewing. Yeah. See this bit here? Just there's a small chance of a new low forming here. Once again, the problem that we got, Daniel, is that even if something is to form here, it's not going to get really fed by any sort of monsoonal influence. So it's going to be really difficult for a cyclone to just kick off from nothing and become a tropical cyclone. By that stage, we would have had a good solid week, maybe week and a half of dry air pushing up through the Gulf and Queensland, which would really limit the ability for this thing to sort of tap into any moisture and really put itself together. So I'd say there's a low probability, but not a no probability. You can see that there is a chance of a low. I don't think there's any real evidence of that low becoming a cyclone. Yeah, there's about a 10% risk of it becoming a cyclone. So is there something brewing there? Possibly. There could be some weak equatorial troughing. And you can see we've also got some signs that something new could be brewing in the Coral Sea around that time. So we wouldn't have enough energy in the atmosphere to support two in that close proximity in a couple of weeks' time. So it would be a case of one of these would get themselves together. Whether it be the Coral Sea one or whether it be the NT one, there'd only be real potential for one of them. And then even then, that's only a low probability scenario, okay? But there's a reason why the cyclone season goes till the end of April, mate. We got to stay vigilant until the end of April. But for now, there's no credible threat there, but there are some rumblings of some weak rotation, both in the Coral Sea and in the northeast top end in about 10 to 15 days. Just let's get through this one first, and then we can start talking about some maybe nots, eh? Another question for Cape Trib to Port Douglas. Bridie, we talked about Cape Trib to Port Douglas, so I won't talk about that area again. Just go back to the start. When this is available, you can go back to the start, mate. Hi, Nitso. I remember Yasi being on the direct path to impact Cairns. It went from a 2 to 3 in the same day, and went to the 4 the next day, it just started tracking and ended up where it did. Yeah, so this one's, similar track, west to west-southwest. So it's going to go west-southwest tonight, then west again tomorrow. So very, very clear track to the west and a long track to the west too. It's going to get to the WA coast before it starts doing anything other than going west. So in terms of distance covered, this one might cover about the same amount of westerly distance as Yasi did. So it's a very strong ridge. It's just that the ridge here is centred over Central Australia. The ridge for Yasi was centred over the Coral Sea, which drove the system in that straight line. But this is going to drive in largely a straight line as well, across the Cape, across the Gulf, across the NT, and across the northern WA. So similar steering mechanism, just different parts where that steering is set in. Evolve from now 6735 says on YouTube, I'm currently on Lizard Island. Oh Jesus, they haven't evacuated you just in case. Anyway, I'm gonna get thrashed. If the eye hits us, what top gust speeds are you thinking? Oh, look, if the eye hits you, you'll get somewhere between 250 and 300 kilometre an hour winds. If the eye hits you, you'll get Cat 4 winds, which is in that 250 to 280 range, all right? So that's probably what you'd see if the eye hits you. But I don't expect the eye to hit you. We got to come a fair bit off course for the eye to hit Lizard Island directly. So I expect you to get Category 2 winds. So I expect you to get 60 to 70, maybe up to 80 knots if you're unlucky, would be your max. But if the eye hits you, all bets are off. You're getting over 200s easy. But as I say, mate, that's a worst case scenario, and I don't expect that to happen. The actual case scenario, I expect you to get Category 2 winds on Lizard Island, which, by the way, if we just go to Lizard Island, it's a pretty serious wind. And don't forget, it's not just about the wind. You've also got, when we go to Cooktown, we'll use the Cooktown overlay. We often forget when we talk about winds, but we've also got waves to contend with as well. So when you take a look at the wave heights here for Lizard Island, where am I going? There we go. Wave heights up here for Lizard Island. Have a look at this. Whoo! 5, 6, 7 metre waves. Right, that's pretty massive waves. Like we always talk about the winds and we forget about the waves, and they're massive waves on the south side of the cyclone. You can see the large swell that we've got as well from the southeast. That's serious wave heights there, isn't it? So Lizard's on the outskirts of that, of course, but 5 metre waves, pretty impressive for something that's on the reef. Pretty serious stuff there from a wave height perspective. But obviously the big issue is going to be wind. And as I say, with wind, I don't expect you to get the eye. I don't expect you, you're going to get closer than most to the eye, yeah, for sure. But I don't expect the eye to be pushing over you. And so because of that, I expect you to be sort of maxing out around Category 2 winds at Lizard Island. Rosie says, best weather channel. Thank you so much. No worries, Rosie. Thanks for tuning in. Mariba, how's it looking? Just a bit windy and a bit rainy on Friday. We've talked about the North Tropical Coast in detail and the Tablelands in detail a little bit earlier in the broadcast. So make sure when it's available, you check the timestamps and go back through and have a look where we talked about Mariba Nancy. It should be available in about half an hour. I'll get the timestamps up there before I go to bed. 20 years since Larry, doesn't feel that long. No, it doesn't, Helen. I still remember Larry, because I remember it fondly. Archer River Servo, get a feed. Yeah, probably get a feed before the cyclone gets there. Weipa is closing tomorrow. I'm assuming that means the airport. Yeah. Max Moss, excellent coverage again, Nitso. You are the best. Bomber's got nothing on you. You make the weather report so interesting and cover everything. Thank you, Max from Mossman. No worries, Max. Thanks for tuning in, mate. Thank you very much for your support. Hey, Nitso, the rain has just started here in Cairns. Yes, the junk showers, they're on tonight. It's good to have things finally cooling down. Yes, and we're starting to see the change in the season. Everyone else in Queensland's going to move to dry weather, except for maybe southeast Queensland. We're changing in the season is underway. We're starting to see that. Outback, love your presentation, mate. Great work. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Outback. Well done, Nitso, with the gym and weight loss. 50 kilos is awesome. Yeah, thanks, Fee. It's been hectic. It's been one of the things you miss when you're trying to get on this sort of. It's more than just a weight loss journey. It's just The doc said I was going to die by the time I was 50, mate. You know, like, and I was 40 at the time. Yeah, in a couple of years, I've managed to do it because it's a wake-up call when you're 40 and you think you still got your life ahead of you. You're still single, you're still, you know, enjoying life. And, yeah, when you turn up to the doc and he says you got diabetes, you got this, you got fatty liver, you got all this shit that's going to kill you by the time you're 50. It was a wake-up call, man. And, you know, you need a doc that's like that. You can't do this body positivity shit, too much of it. You can't have that shit. You need someone that's going to be honest with you and say, mate, you don't sort your shit out, you're going to die. And, you know, then it sort of makes you question, right, how bad do I want to get better? How bad do I want to live? And what am I living for? You know, and yeah, you knuckle down and you get your shit done. But you've got to have that person that's honest with you to start with, not the person that says just be positive in your own body and all that stuff. I listened to that shit for a while, and it only steers you down the wrong track. So it was great that I had a doctor that was just so blunt and said, mate, you don't lose your fucking weight, you're going to die, and you're going to die by the time you're 50. Just makes you think, Driving Bowen to Cairns early Friday morning for the weekend. Should I expect torrential rain most of the time? Friday morning? Yeah. Yeah, you would, mate. Not between Bowen and Townsville. You might just get a few showers there. But once you start heading north of Townsville on Friday, yeah, you're certainly going to start to get showers that increase. And then once you get north of about Tully, that's the sweet spot, I reckon. North of Tully, that's where it's going to get pretty heavy. So if we take a look here for Friday, you know, so as soon as we get north of Tully, you see how the rain just doesn't let up. So you go Friday, 4 a.m, 7 a.m, 10 a.m, 1 p.m, 4 p.m, 7 p.m. There's just 20 to 30 mils every single 3-hour period. So it's not at the stage where we're getting 100 mils in a couple of hours, but we're just not seeing an end. So it's just continuously raining. So yeah, you're going to cop a fair bit of rain, through that area, mate. So as I say, not much going through Townsville on Friday morning, but once you get north of there, the rain will set in for the rest of your trip. So just make sure you're budgeting for an extra hour or two for the trip. Just take it easy. Yeah, Johnny, we talked about Katherine, mate. Just wait till this is over, and I'll put the timestamp, and you can go directly where we talked about Katherine. And Katherine, we talked about Katherine and Naiu because they're very much linked in this setup. Will Cairns get anything, Stevie? We've talked about Cairns a few times now, mate. I'll leave that. I'll just make sure you're checking out the what's the names, the timestamps, and you can find out what we said about Cairns. Justin, great work, Nitso. Thanks, Justin. Skyscapes, well done. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Look, I owe a lot to the doctor. It's the doctor that gives you the wake up call, and you need. And even if you don't have a doctor, you need a friend that just says, "Hey, mate, listen, you're fat. Get better." You need a friend like that. You really do. And yeah, I'm very grateful for my mates because they also got me on the straight and narrow. I don't get much shit from them about not going out on the drink anymore, you know, and not doing a lot of the stuff that I used to love to do, and I still do occasionally. But you need mates that are going to support you if you're going to do that, and I've got great mates that do that. What do you think about driving Townsville to Cairns Saturday morning? Will there be heaps of rain still? Yes, there will be heaps of rain still, Friday and Saturday on the way to Cairns. We do see the rain will start to settle down Sunday. Okay, so if you want to travel to Cairns, travel Sunday. Kununurra is going to get high wind gusts. Probably not. Lakey. Let's have a look. We haven't talked much about that northern part of the Kimberley, did we? We sort of breezed over them. So let's go to... I'm just trying to think, do we have a Kununurra overlay? No, we've got a Wyndham overlay, so I'll just find Wyndham. Right, so with Kununurra, because you're inland and because we expect the cyclone to sort of get around the southern Joseph Bonaparte, you're going to be on the south side. So let's have a look at what the south side's doing when we know that the cyclone is going to be creating most of its rain on the north side as it pushes across. So Kununurra being potentially just on the south side will probably miss that heaviest rain unless the cyclone comes south of you. So the heaviest rain is going to be in the Joseph Bonaparte coastline and then out to sea and then up towards Cairns, all right, so up here. So that's where we'd be expecting to see the heaviest stuff. Once the cyclone pushes past, there'll probably be a little convergence band that comes through to to Wyndham, but being a little bit further east of that, you might miss that at Kununurra. And when we take a look at winds, this is what you asked for, wasn't it, winds? So, sorry, I gibbered about rain. If we take a look here at winds, with the cyclone passing to your north and you being inland of the coast, the chances of you seeing really strong winds over Kununurra are going to be quite slim. So here we go. There's our cyclone coming near the coastline. So Kununurra sort of sees gusty winds up around 35 knots. And then you can see we sort of get to about 40 knots potentially, 35 to 40 knots, but they're only gusts. So our sustained winds are way lower. Have a look at our sustained winds. They're down around 20 knots. All right, so we're not looking at cyclone strength winds for Kununurra. We're just looking at some gusty winds, a few showers. Nothing crazy, unless the only way this changes, mate, Lakey, is if the cyclone pushes, or the low pushes, say, down here through Newry, then while we might not see a hell of a lot more wind around Kununurra, because once again you're inland, we will see a hell of a lot more rain in that setup. Okay, so remember, the cyclone, one of the hallmarks of this cyclone is all of its biggest rain is on the northern side, all through its track. From now all the way through to landfall in Queensland, to the Northern Territory, to WA, that heaviest rain is going to be on the northern side. So that's really important to understand. So from a wind perspective, mate, in answer to your question, 30 to 35 knots. Chance maybe of a gusty storm where you might get a 40 knot gust out of a storm. And outside of that, I'm not seeing too much outside of that, mate. Gavin, nothing for Townsville. No, just some strong winds up around 25 to 35 knots for Townsville. A couple of showers on Friday. Nothing with regards to any significant rainfall for Townsville. When does rain start in Townsville? Louis, as I say, mate, there's not much there for Townsville to get stuck into, to be honest. So if you're looking for rain to start, as in just showers, heck, we might get a shower tonight, but we're not expecting any heavy rain through Townsville, mate, at any stage. We might get a little heavy shower here on Friday. Let's have a look. Townsville. Mate, even that's pretty hard to come by. Yeah, a bit of shower activity Friday, Saturday. Let's have a look. Maybe the AI's got something for us. Yeah, so it sort of gets to about Rolling Stone. So those heavier showers get to about Rolling Stone, and that's about as far south as they want to get. And then the rest of it's just the typical sort of isolated dribbly showers in the afternoon. Lots of cloud cover, just like today, lots of cloud cover, a couple of dribbly bits of rain, but nothing huge, mate, nothing down in Townsville. Anything more significant is north of Rolling Stone, and even the really big stuff is north of Cardwell, so not even in Ingham. Ingham's getting quite a few showers, of course, but the really big stuff is sort of north of Ingham. Jan, thanks Nitzo and staff, bloody amazing weather reports. Thanks Jan, thanks for tuning in, mate, and thanks for your support. Lakey says legend, thanks man. No worries, Lakey. Just remember though, if that cyclone goes just south of you there at Kununurra, that's where I'd be looking out for the possibility of that heavy rain coming into Kununurra. Okay, so the big thing you got to remember is if I'm just north of the cyclone or the low, it won't be a cyclone there, it'll be a low. If I'm north of the low, I'm going to get a lot of rain. If I'm sort of within that 100 k's north of it, if I'm 100 k's south of it, I won't get much rain. Just remember that part. Thanks for your overtime, Nitzo. No other weather mob do it. No worries, Reese. Thanks, mate. Alan, congratulations on your weight loss, Nitsa. I'm glad you took stock of it all, mate, and ignored the naysayers. Been a member with you since 2015, the OCC days, and I've loved the work you do. That's awesome, Alan. Thanks very much for tuning in, bud. Louis gives me the high fives on you, Louis. Hey, I wonder, are you still doing some footy, Louis? Louis used to be a really good footy player back in the day. I'm not sure if he still plays. How bad... Oh, I've missed this one. Sean Smith says, how bad will the storm surge in Princess Charlotte Bay get? I have a mate hiding up a creek in the mangroves of the Marriott River Cape. Oh, fuck. Why is he staying in there, mate? Goodness me. Ah, yikes. He can't get out of there? Oh, it's just not an area that I'd be... I sort of don't even want to sort of give you an idea of how bad it is, because I don't think it's a very smart move to just be chilling out in a little creek in... let's have a look. I'll tell you what, if he's got any other option, it's better than just sitting in a creek here at Princess Charlotte Bay. Goodness me. Let me have a look. This is getting into that area where I don't really want to, because it is so dangerous, it's sort of getting into an area where I certainly don't want to give you advice about staying in a creek in the middle of potentially a Cat 4 or 5 cyclone. Yeah, let's have a look. So in the modelling here, there's some good news. We can see here that the wave heights, while they're pretty spectacular offshore, you are a bit sheltered there, aren't you, in Princess Charlotte Bay? So what do we get? We get to about, what's the highest wave height in the bay? So about 2 metres, 2 metre wave heights. So that assumes the cyclone hits a little further north though, right? So if the cyclone hits a little closer to Princess Charlotte Bay, there'll be a funneling effect going on here, right? So, oh, geez, that gets very dangerous. If there is a funneling effect going on here, because the site there, that's a better example there. So see how we suddenly jump our wave heights up to about 2.5, 3 metres. Now that's once again, because the cyclone's hitting the way it's hitting, and it's hitting sort of parallel to, perpendicular to the coast, the storm surge is going to be really big on the side that's getting the onshore flow, i.e. just to the south of the cyclone. And it's going to be really big on the coast here. So Princess Charlotte Bay would be really big storm surge if the cyclone was moving southwest as it hit the coast. But because the cyclone's moving east-west, there's a chance there that it might be, Jesus, I'm not going to say it's going to be safe, because it's not going to be safe, but there might be a chance there that Princess Charlotte Bay doesn't see a huge surge in this setup. But yeah, geez, you sure your mate can't get out of there? It's not a place I'd want to be sort of hunkering down. Certainly not. There'd be a lot of safer places around. Surely there's a few bloody what's her name? Laura's just down here. Heck, even Cohen would be safer than sitting in the middle of Princess Charlotte Bay while there's a Cat 4 around. You know, Cohen would, because we already talked about Cohen, they're only going to see Cat 1, Cat 2 winds. He could get in his car right now, get in that boat, not get in the boat, get that boat over to Cohen and just chill out there for a night, or down to Laura. You know, there's so many other options there than to sit and chill on a creek right next to a Cat 4. Anyway, people do crazy stuff. Hey, listen, I chase cyclones. So I used to chase cyclones anyway. So I'm not gonna lecture anyone. Dan, we talked about Lizard Island specifically, and we talked about Lizard Island getting around Category 2, higher end Category 2 winds potentially. And Jai Schwartz, is the landfall area pretty much set north of Cooktown? Yes. The landfall area is pretty much set north of Cooktown, but we don't know. There's still an error margin that pushes it into Cape Melville. All right, so there's still an error margin that gets it down this far, which is still well north of Cooktown, of course, but gets a little bit uncomfortably close to Cooktown, you know, with a system hitting as far south as here and as far north as Lockhart River. So that's where we're set at the moment. Now, there's going to be slight variations inside that area, but inside that zone is where we're anticipating. And so for Lizard Island, if we get something that comes on the southern envelope of that, yeah, that puts Lizard Island potentially in a Cat 2/3 wind field, whereas something further north, Lizard Island would only see Cat 2 winds. Okay, so for Lizard Island, that southern area is important. For Cooktown, marginal Cat 1 winds, whether it hits up here or whether it hits down here, marginal Cat 1 winds. Remember, the cyclone is small. For Queensland standards, it's a small cyclone. It doesn't have a really large area of effect. Okay, so the winds and the radius of the winds isn't going to be quite as large as what we'd normally expect in a cyclone. Dan, thanks, Nitso. We'll tune in Friday for the updates on Katherine. Yeah, so Friday's update is going to be a lot more about NT than Queensland. We'll talk a bit about the aftermath and what we experienced, and then quickly move over to the NT where all the flooding potential occurs, and obviously the big strike on Groot might occur. So that's the focal point on Friday rather than Queensland as much. And then NT, we'll start talking about NT as well. Jai says, thanks, mate. Love your work. No worries, Jai. All right, folks, that's it for me tonight. Just remember, tune in Friday if you're interested in about that second coming of the cyclone, and how it's going to impact, especially the NT. Talk a bit more about the heavy rain that would have been setting in by that stage for Cairns and for the North Tropical Coast, and we'll be talking about how much more heavy rain for them is to come. And then we'll be focusing our energy here around Numbulwar, Groot, Nhulunbuy, this region in here, and then also through Katherine and this area here towards Kununurra, Wyndham and Columbaroo. And then hopefully by Friday we'll have maybe a slightly better idea about whether or not the cyclone's going to curve into the coast in WA. We still won't know what part of WA yet, but we'll have a better idea if it's going to curve or not. And then by Sunday night, we should be able to start narrowing down where it might start to curve onto the coast, if in fact it does show signs of that. Okay, thanks for watching tonight. Just a reminder, if you would like to support us, we have a Weather IQ subscription starting at $32.95 a year. You get all my forecasts. For example, today, what did I do today? I did a few forecasts today. I did 6, I think. And just an example, you get a blurb. By the way, I send that blurb out for free on Facebook, so just make sure you read that blurb. Sometimes it's got important information. And then, so there was one forecast about all the technical stuff. Basically, they got told everything you got told, but also the reason why the cyclone's moving and the way it's moving. And then we did an update on the Queensland Weather Week, talked about that next low as well. Cape York Peninsula, on the ground effects, so we did a ground zero effects analysis. Cairns regional forecast, we talked about the rain coming for them. Eastern Top End and Groot, we talked about them in detail. And then just a brief update on southeast Queensland and central and north Queensland as well. Just brief stuff there, there's not much going on. All right, so if you'd like to support us, get access to those on a daily basis during the wet season, check out our subscription at weatheriq.com.au, so subscribe. Thank you very much. And I'll have the timelines up there for you, so you don't have to sit through 2 hours of this. You can just go to the 5 minutes or 10 minutes where I'm talking about your specific area. I'll get that done before I